Live from New York, I have 3 times the WNBA expansion news. So much to talk about. I am inside the WNBA offices as we speak. Spoke to Cathy Engelbert, spoke to ownership groups from Detroit, Cleveland, Philadelphia. So much to get to. Locked On Women's Basketball starts now.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, and quite a Monday it is. Howard Megdal here, Locked On Women's Basketball, coming to you from inside a soundproof booth within the WNBA offices, where I am here to tell you all about what we have learned. WNBA expansion ×3. Segment 1, I'm going to lay it out for you, what's happening and why. Segment 2, we're going to hear from the commissioner herself, Cathy Engelbert, had a chance to chat with her about things. And segment 3, we're going to hear from Tweety, from Deanna Nolan, because there is a human element to this that goes beyond the massive business implications here. But so let's start. What's happening? Cleveland, 2028, Detroit, 2029, and Philadelphia, 2030. The next 3 teams, WNBA, at the conclusion of this round of expansion, will be at 18 teams in 2030. So let's break down what we know about each of them. Detroit, Cleveland, Philadelphia, all NBA owners who are also now on the WNBA side. So Detroit's Arn Tellem was with us, had the chance to chat with him for a while about this. And again, the history of the Detroit Shock cannot be overlooked. This is not just a team that existed in the WNBA. This is a team that had a massive, passionate fan base, won multiple WNBA championships under the tutelage of Bill Laimbeer, and a lead assistant named Cheryl Reeve. You may have heard of her. She's gone on to do a couple of things since then. A team that was dominant force for much of the 2000s. And again, and I wrote about this in Rare Gems, but there's an alt history here where there is not a crash and a change in ownership that means Detroit keeps a team throughout this time. So there's this history there. There's something to draw on that is very significant. Everyone institutionally was behind this. Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, big behind this as well. So Detroit makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. You know the market, you know the history, you know the infrastructure. Really good to have that in place. That's 2029, and they'll be hard at work to follow Cleveland. And Cleveland, again, with Cavaliers ownership. Nick Barlage was here, CEO over there for the ownership group, who is also has some history in the WNBA, worked in the WNBA offices actually on 2 separate occasions. Talked to him a little bit about that. We were both kind of marveling about the fact that everything feels different now. Everything feels different now. Why is Cleveland great? Again, you still have the history. We do not know for sure that they will go with the Rockers any more than we know for sure that Detroit will go with the Shock. They're preserving the options and having those conversations. Nick Barlage described it to me as something that in Cleveland there's going to be thoughtful conversations with a lot of different stakeholders, as we saw in NWSL with the Boston franchise. Important to get this right. When you don't, you hear about it. So makes a lot of sense for them to do this. I want you to hear from Nick a little bit here, and we'll go back and we're going to talk about Philly to conclude segment 1. I'm Howard Megdal. You're listening to Locked On Women's Basketball.
How that continues to go. Yeah. Good to see you. Thanks.
Howard Megdal, the 9 and the Nets. Nice to meet you. We already have a reporter right in Cleveland for you. So, so we're on top of it. We have somebody in every WNBA city at the Nets. We'll make sure you guys we're covered every step of the way.
Wonderful.
So just want to start a little bit about the Rockers details and sort of where we are on that, and you know how the decision-making process revolved around embracing that history.
Yeah, we love what the Rockers stood for. As I said earlier, they opened the door of opportunity for us. You know, for us, it's really about we're a city on the rise. We're a city that's growing, and it's such a great, and this is such a unique opportunity for us. We really want to take the time to be thoughtful and inclusive around what's the identity of this new WNBA opportunity. the Rockers are gonna be part of that. Be part of that decision tree or that choice. But at the end of the day, we really want to be thoughtful about what does Cleveland represent as we go forward. And so we're going to keep our options open relative to the identity of the team and go through a thoughtful and inclusive process that our fans and the community will embrace.
In terms of Cleveland itself, I heard you mention the Final Four a couple of minutes ago, and the response that happened there, was that sort of a tipping point moment for you guys to decide it's time for this?
We've been working on this for 3 years now, and so we've been studying it. We've been involved. We helped to operate a WTA 250 event in Cleveland, which is a women's professional sporting event.
Yeah.
And we wanted to diversify into women's sports, and so then naturally over time we started looking at every sport, and the WNBA rose to the top very quickly. And then what was the final kind of catalyst for us to go all in and the way we did was hosting the Women's Final Four in 2024. Seeing the way the city was on fire, seeing the way that we wrapped our arms around the athletes, for us it just became very natural, and we set forth, and we're here today, which is awesome.
Cathy talked about, again, really significant, and do not lose sight of it. Cleveland 2024 was a massive success. And, as somebody who covered it in person, you were kind of in the eye of the hurricane, and you were feeling the way in which Cleveland was ready for women's basketball in a fundamental way. That place was, I know it's obviously corporate speak to a certain extent, it's always on fire. It really felt that way. This was something that achieved all of its objectives. And so again, if we're talking about the way in which the college game impacts the pro game, here's a direct impact because Cleveland is here today. We have to talk about Philly before we get to break. And again, Cathy talked about this, and we'll get into this a little bit in segment 2, but the fierce regional rivalries that we are about to see. Take it from someone who grew up in New Jersey. I don't know if you guys knew that, if you ever listened to the podcast before, but who sees firsthand what it means to have New York and Philly going at it. And now New York and Philly and DC, it's a big deal. It mattered, by the way. Major League Soccer is an interesting comparison for the WNBA in a lot of ways, not least of which they're about the same age. But also when we saw the Metro Stars and DC United turn into the Red Bulls, Philadelphia Union, and DC United, it reached another level of rivalry. It's a very big deal. So ask Josh Harris about it, because there's some interesting overlaps in terms of the overall timeline. And Cathy gets into it too. But the arena deal that came through is to open in 2031. You'll notice Philly 2030. Now, the Wells Fargo Center is great. Frankly, there are other reasons why there's a new arena coming that have nothing to do with the Wells Fargo Center being a great place to have an NBA team, a WNBA team, doesn't matter. It's a great arena. So if the worst case scenario happens and they have to play year 1 in the Wells Fargo Center, that's still an absolutely fantastic option. But now Josh Harris is talking about, we'd like to push forward a little bit. Well, I'll share more of that both in our shorts and as the week goes on. There's obviously so much to unpack here, and I'm only one man in one phone booth here in the WNBA offices. So a lot more to come on that. But the Philadelphia market, it's the 5th largest market in America. It is a basketball market. And Cathy Engelbert knows this. Father's Jack Ramsey. And you can't say the words Jack Ramsey in Philadelphia without people understanding what this means. This is Philadelphia basketball. Philadelphia basketball has always had this massive women's component from Immaculata and their work early on in the AIAW years to being the home of Dawn Staley and Muffet McGraw, Gina Oriema right out in Norristown. It's a basketball place. And so you have the right investment behind it and the right coverage and the right opportunity here at the right time within this league. Philadelphia's going to blow up. Philadelphia is going to blow up. And I'm just saying it here. I know this city as well as anybody. The city is built for the WNBA to be a massive success in really the same way that Golden State was, and it's why the Valkyries are doing so well right away. So back with more. I spoke to Cathy about this, and we're going to get into what this means for the league, what this means for the CBA, what this means for media rights. There's just a whole lot of things that are all massively benefited by this triple expansion. Back right after this, I'm Howard Megdal. You're listening to Locked On Women's Basketball. Locked On Women's Basketball is brought to you by FanDuel, and summer sports like the WNBA are in full swing. Whether you're about baseball under the lights, women's basketball in the arenas, or golf on the green, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? FanDuel gives you the opportunity to get in on the game while your friends are busy getting sunburned on the beach. FanDuel, again, has opportunities not just for men's sports, but for women's sports as well. It is a significant part of growing that overall growth of the game to have opportunities be the same for men's and women's sports, and FanDuel does it for you. Now, if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Howard Megdal here, Locked On Women's Basketball. Segment 2, let's hear from the commissioner. Here's Cathy Engelbert talking a little bit about the order in which this stuff has all come together. And then we're going to talk about what that means for the league as a whole. Howard Megdal here, Locked On Women's Basketball. Here's Cathy. Just related to that, does that have any impact on what the payout is overall? In other words, is there an escalator clause for media rights deal for the teams being more sooner?
No, there's no specific tie to the cadence of bringing in expansion.
Okay.
It's just bringing additional teams and additional media markets.
Right, but those teams specifically will.
3-year look.
Okay.
Nothing specific tied to the number of teams or these particular cities. And I think they'll be thrilled with these 3 cities.
In terms of Philly, obviously, there's a couple of overlaying timelines. The fact I was talking to Josh about that 2031 is when the new arena is supposed to come. He's hoping it'll be by 2030. I'm sure you guys are as well. But is that part and parcel of figuring, this is why Philly is the 2030 team?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Why Philly got the latest spot is because the arena, because that was all being negotiated as we were thinking about all these bids. Mm-hmm. So when we knew, and they were very comfortable with being the last one of these.
And then just related to it, you talked about one at a time. Is having 2 sort of part of that learning process here with the W? I know there wasn't any expansion for 15 years, and I wonder if that played a part in finding a comfort with that.
It's more the logistics of brand identity, the Nike, you got to have 18 months in advance. And so it was more just giving them time to build their brand identity, to build their fandom, bring one at a time. And, next year's going to be interesting with the expansion draft with 2. Right. At the same time that most of the league are free agents, most of the veterans of the league are free agents. So this will just give us a nice cadence off the 28 year. The Olympics are in LA, 28, 29.
Really, I love that Cathy always sees where the drama is coming to. And we've talked about this a lot on the podcast. Lord knows we're going to continue to. The fact that almost everyone in this league is a free agent coming up ahead of an expansion draft. And then, of course, markets that are opening. But let's talk about some of the things she said and break it down a little bit. There is an ability to renegotiate. There's a live look-in, is the way she referred to it, after 3 years of the new media rights deal. Media rights deal already has grown the media rights total by between 8 and 9 times heading into next season, which has an impact on the CBA. Now, as the league and the PA get to talk about where things are going, there's an understanding that there is a 9-figure deal coming in with each of the new expansion rights for 3 teams in 28, 29, and 30. Again, it's really important to put those numbers in perspective, right? $250 million has been reported by Sports Business Journal for each of the last 3. Cathy did not confirm that or deny it when she was asked directly about it, but no reason to doubt that reporting from Sports Business Journal. And it's important context, right? Because a lot of people talk about the capital raise. It was back in 2022. And the league sold 16% of itself for $75 million. And that number, of course, looks incredibly small now when you look at the numbers of what teams, what valuations are, what everything is worth. But there is a second side to that I don't know that people necessarily put in proper context, which is this league had no business platform. This league had to build that out and needed money in order to do that. And so I say all that to say there's a long tail to what that expansion, what that uh, capital raise meant for expansion. And that puts you in a position to say, would we be looking at $250 million per team for the next 3 years of expansion, 28, 29, and 30, had you not put that into place? Golden State bought in at $50 million. This is all about league growth. So there's a lot to it. And it's not as simple as, well, 16% of the league was worth a lot more than 75 million. So therefore that was a mistake by the league. There's a lot going on there. And I think a really important context to be thinking about. But yeah, there's an ongoing negotiation with the WNBPA. There is now essentially a clear path understanding, right? There are all these moving parts. Well, expansion. What are we going to do with expansion? Well, what are we doing on the media rights deal? Media rights is set at least at a floor with a 3-year look in, right? So 26, 27, 28. If growth continues, you're talking about a live look in at the time the league is about to go from 16 to 18 and do it in Detroit, a massive market, and Philly, which we talked about, the 5th largest media market in America. So that's a big deal. That's a really big deal when the WNBA is looking at what are their media rights deal worth? What are their opportunities? Now, I've heard from other people it's a soft look in. Are they going to be able to push? Be interesting to see. You also want to keep your partner happy over the long term. WNBA is going to continue on this trajectory. Well, WNBA rights are going to continue to be some of the most valuable in professional sports. It's going to be really interesting to see that growth continue and what it ultimately means. But from a league perspective, and Cathy spoke about this, and it's so true. This is why, frankly, I get angry in reverse with Major League Baseball. They making the decision to pull out of minor league cities and cutting to 120. What does that mean? That means fewer people have direct access to professional baseball. And Cathy spoke about this, and it was a bit of a throwaway line, but it's really important to think about, right? She said when she kept talking to potential partners, it was the idea that, we're trying to activate 100 cities, and you only have 12 cities. And that's now 18, and some really big, important cities too. So this matters for the overall footprint of the league. This matters for where they are doing it. They did it in a thoughtful way. This was a process that you would not have seen under previous league presidents. Flat out. End of story. The way in which this happened, soup to nuts, from the business side to the organizational side to who wants in. Detroit Pistons owners pulled out 15 years ago, and now we're paying 9 figures for the right to get back in. That just tells you everything. Cleveland opts out 20 years ago. They're opting back in. And by the way, Philadelphia, if they had acted sooner, Philadelphia could have been team 13 and wouldn't have cost them as much. But they're in now too, and that's 5 years on, without getting into greater detail with that. There is a sea change here, and this represents a sea change that is paying off in a fundamental way. But it also matters at a human level. When I get back, I want you to hear from Deanna Nolan, who I had a chance to pull aside and chat with one-on-one. It goes beyond just a big financial win for the league. So back after this, I'm Howard Megdal. You're listening to Locked On Women's Basketball. Howard Megdal here. Segment 3, the human cost of leaving a city. And in Rare Gems, I tell the story of Carly Knox and Cheryl Reeve, WNBA power couple, now in Minnesota, of course. Carly, the driving force on the business side. Cheryl, she's won a game or two as coach and president of basketball operations. What they did in Minnesota, and I've written this, they could have done in Detroit. The Detroit Shock, remarkably successful. The all-time record for a playoff crowd, which I loved that Arn Tellem kept talking about this. Let's talk about that there in the book. They're on their way on vacation And they get a call from a friend saying, hey, why does the Detroit Shock website redirect to Tulsa? That was how two of the most important figures in the history of modern women's basketball found out their franchise wasn't a franchise anymore. That's what women's basketball used to mean in ways that make us all livid. Here's what it means today. We didn't get to see Deanna Nolan in her 30s. Deanna Nolan, a local, loved playing in Detroit. Again, comes from Flint, four-time All-Star, 2006 Finals MVP. We didn't get to see her 30s because when they ripped a team away from Detroit, Deanna Nolan didn't want anything to do with this league. So to have her here today, it resonated with me. It resonated with Arn Tellem. He was talking to me about this, that they were talking about it backstage before this presentation. But I want you to hear from her, from Tweety herself, one of the WNBA greats, somebody who, in a just world, we would have seen a full career from here, and now is part of representing, not in the ownership group, just a point of clarity, but here to represent the Detroit WNBA team. Let's hear from her. So, Deanna, I know this has to be a full circle moment for you. I mean, as somebody who had so much success in this league, made the decision to leave the league over the league leaving Detroit. What does it feel like to be part of the restoration here now?
It feels amazing. It's great. It's been a long time coming. I'm just proud and appreciate that the investors and everybody is bringing the team back to Detroit. Like I said, we have a winning history. We have such loyal fans. We're a blue-collar team. We were, and I think they're a blue-collar city. And then, like I was telling my wife earlier,
Yeah.
I was in a hurry, grabbed an old bag from like 15 years ago, and this was in it.
Oh my God, I love it. Yes,
Couldn't
amazing.
believe it. I was like, oh my God.
Congratulations.
So,
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Welcome back. 49th all time in win shares in WNBA history. Didn't play a game in her 30s. Easily would have been, top 10, top 15 had she been able to have a complete career. But that's where we're at. That's where the WNBA is at now. 18 teams, major markets filled. And again, done through 2030, not finished having those conversations. Cathy spoke about Houston and about how Houston Rockets ownership is interested in being part of this. So a return to the Comets. I don't know. I just want to close here by talking about what this all means, because some people who are newer to this space don't necessarily realize it. But the WNBA from 1997 through 2002 drew crowds comparable. You'll hear this a lot, right? They say, oh, it's the biggest TV audience for a particular game in a particular channel since 2002, 2001. It's never, or it's not often ever, because this league was big time in the pop culture in that period of time. This is a restoration as much as it is something new, a new surge. The surge is the word that was used here. And a restoration, I would argue, to its rightful place and then some. And that's what this feels like today. Detroit and Cleveland, they never should have had a generation without a WNBA team. Philadelphia, I grew up 15 minutes from Philadelphia, so I know what that culture is. And the city of Philadelphia deserves a WNBA team. The city of Philadelphia is going to embrace WNBA team. I am as certain of it as I am of anything. And they have the amount of time to ramp up properly to do this in a way that's going to ensure that success. There's enough money behind it. But at the end of the day, there's somebody right now who's growing up in and around Philly who's going to dream about playing for her hometown team, like Tweety did, like Deanna Nolan did. And she's going to get to do it because the WNBA is there in Philly. And so all these other things we talked about today on the business side, They really matter. They absolutely matter. But this is just a real human victory if you care about women's basketball too. And if you're listening to this podcast, you probably do. And I know I do. So that's our show for today. Thank you so much for tuning into our emergency podcast. Again, we'll be with you all week. A lot more to get to. Conversation with Cathy I had. Conversation across the board with ownership groups. So much more to come. Kent Youngblood from the Minnesota Lynx beat over at the Minnesota Star Tribune is about to retire. He'll be joining us talking Lynx basketball too, getting you ready for the Commissioner's Cup. Big week. Much more to come. Until then, I'm Howard Megdal, wishing all of you a wonderful expansion day.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.